The opinions expressed in this show belong to the person expressing them. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of Rancher or any other entity.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's super intense episode of Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins, and I am thrilled to be here with you today. Coffee is what brings us together. No, actually. So I have a podcast that I did with Pop for Popcast, but we recorded it a while ago, and he's been doing a bunch of other stuff, so it hasn't aired yet. And in it, he asked me about why I started the show. I'll let you listen to or watch the thing to actually hear why, but I was thinking about it again this morning, where it's funny that I do things, I create things in my world to help me live a healthier life. So part of why I do this show is because it helps me stay connected to the things that are going on, and then I'm happy to share those things with you, but it's a little bit selfish. And then I was joking this morning that, if left to my own devices, I would just sit around all day in like sweatpants and slippers, but Coffee and Cloud Native, it's a reason to put a shirt on and wear pants. and shoes and whatever. Anyway, the purpose of this show is actually to share with you news and interesting content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and to build a community of people who are interested in using technology to live a better life. If you're watching live, consider following or subscribing to the channel. And if you're watching a replay, well, please give the video a thumbs up so the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. Join the free community site and the Discord server. Links to that are in the video description and scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Live chat happens in Discord with a bot that relays between YouTube and Twitch. So come hang out with us either during the show or after. And the live chat in Discord, woo-wee, that's where the action is. So let's take a moment and say hello to those who have joined us live today. Good morning, Steve Jaguar. Nice to see you. Smalls, howdy. Ian, Stack Clash, Peter Keach. Good morning. Nuno, is Nuno here? No, Nuno's in a meeting today, probably. Well, good morning, Duck. Sneaking off to watch the show. I appreciate that. Very nice. Frank, Chrysalis, Mo Grady. Wow, lots of people here today. Clint, awesome. OFS, cool. Seeing that OFS would love to have a dog snoring next to me. Like him, her, I don't know. There's nothing in the name that lets me know, so whatever. Wifebot's in the other room with our dogs snoring, because that's what dogs do. So good morning, everybody, and good morning all of you who are watching live on Twitch and YouTube that, who aren't in the chat. So briefly, news. This month's theme is policy, whether that's network policy, security policy, admission control policy. So look for a challenge in the community site later today to help encourage everybody in the community, myself included. Remember, I do all of this so that I have a reason to go and actually do other things, to start exploring implementing policies within our Kubernetes clusters. And with that, let's get started on the good stuff. First of all, today, I need like the happy piano music from, what was that dude from Saturday Night Live who, whatever, he wasn't very funny. Continuous inspiration. So today we look inward and we share stuff from the CNCN community. Either members who have created a bio for themselves, please go create a bio for yourself. I was a little sad last night scrolling through and seeing, wow, we have a lot of people who are in the site and there's no bio. Make a bio so that other people can see who you are and what you're interested in and what you like, and so that we can talk to each other. Or don't, and then you won't get to be brought in on this segment. Today, I would like to introduce you to Osama El Bacha, who's from Casablanca, Morocco. Is it as fancy over there as all of us outside of Casablanca are led to believe? He's a chief software architect. And he has a great bio where he says, software isn't written the old way anymore. Where it used to be written from scratch in a lengthy process, now it's often more like choosing the right pieces of open source parts and stitching them together with code. I happen to think that it's more of a challenge for the developer because I like to know and control how every line of code executes from all those little components all the way down to the processor level. It's pretty thorough. That's why when I choose to use open source software, I like to read the source code and contribute back to the community whenever I have time. Awesome. Everybody, please go say hello to Osama and grab anybody else in the community, whether they have a bio or not, and just randomly introduce yourself to someone so that we can start building those relationships. And now, holy cow. Ooh. I said earlier in the live chat, like, buckle up, because it's about to get ridiculous. The collector bots have gathered candidates for the show, and Trufflebot has scored them from 1 to 5 coffees, corresponding to a 75 to 100% probability of being interesting content. He'll post them one at a time in the A/B test channel on Discord, and I'll load them up. Anyone watching live can rate them in Discord, and the final scores are shown when we move to the next item. The total rating for all items is used to rate the show itself, and in the future, those votes will also be used to refine the machine learning model. Hopefully, the coding changing that I was doing last night didn't break Trufflebot. First off, of course, you know, I gotta talk about what happened yesterday. SUSE and Rancher are now one company. The acquisition completed. As of today, I am now a SUSE employee, I guess. So, Rancher at heart. There's a really great article on Forbes, which is very large on my screen here, done with all the fancy animations and stuff like that, that talks about how this is fantastic for everybody who uses open source software, whether you currently use SUSE or not, like the SUSE Linux or any of their other products. There's been concern that maybe SUSE would take Rancher and like slam the gates down on it, and absolutely that is not going to happen. I haven't been allowed to talk about anything because the acquisition wasn't complete, but if you have any questions about the future of Rancher or what's going on inside of SUSE, like I can't tell you what isn't released yet, but I'm happy to talk about the future of Rancher, all of the products, all of the whatever, and then as just tell me, it's gonna be ridiculous. So I'll link to this article. It's cool. I know a lot of you already knew about this. I'm thrilled, super excited. Like for a lot of companies, the acquisition is the final step. They're like, yay, somebody bought us. Let's cash out and go home. Not for Rancher. This is literally like we've reached the first rung on the ladder for the things that we have planned. Now it's gonna get crazy. Crazy. Okay. Next up. It's reInvent. I was going to say it's reInvent this week, but it's actually reInvent this month. When I saw that reInvent, that Amazon was going to do a 3-week-long virtual conference, I thought that was really cool. And yesterday I saw on Twitter that everybody, because when they announced it, virtual conferences were kind of still a new thing. It was back in August or something. And now everybody's been doing virtual conferences, and they're actually really difficult to attend because you're still distracted by your work stuff, and people are looking at the 3-week-long reInvent, and they're like, oh, geez, Amazon, what have you done? Whatever. There's going to be a lot of reInvent content coming out, and I'll try and get as much of it on the show as I can where it's relevant. This is one of those. EKSD. Amazon has now open-sourced the Kubernetes distribution that makes up the Elastic Kubernetes service that they have. Cool. Another Kubernetes distro. Great. The value of this, I was talking with some of the people in Rancher last night, the value of this may be that you might want to run a local EKS clone in a development environment so that you know that you're operating with the same functionality, and that makes a lot of sense. Or maybe you just really like EKS and you want to run it yourself instead of any other Kubernetes distro. Also fantastic. The thing about this is they didn't ship any of the deployment functionality. It's just the core components. So you still have to deploy this somehow yourself, which is when I learned last night that the new... Well, that's not supposed to happen. Why did that happen? Okay, well, apparently that's a beta release that they took down. RKE2, currently called RKE Government because it's actually all the FIP stuff and it's for government, but this is being built in parallel to the current RKE line and will merge back. So it's not full feature parity with RKE right now, so don't be alarmed by the RKE2 part. It's actually something totally different. Whatever. Anyway, with the beta that I was just trying to load a second ago, so that was a 1.18.12 beta 1. So they may have actually pulled that release and released a different one. Let's see if we can get a new release here for you. Anyway, with that, they dropped in functionality enabling 1.18.12 beta 1. Oh, yeah, okay, so it's actually in the release. They dropped in functionality that you can now swap out components. And this README that I have here shows that you can, well, it's actually designed for EKSD. Hey, great. So it'll swap out core DNS, etcd, kubeAPI server, and all those other things I'm not going to name, leaving you with just the Rancher-specific Helm controller, which is a fantastic, fantastic piece of kit. Nginx Ingress controller, and then the Calico Flannel CNI, which of course you could swap out for something else if you want. So if you want to get started with EKSD, you can just pull down RKE2 and swap all the parts out, and boom, kablam, kabang, you're up and running. My chair is really squeaky. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Every time I move, it's like... Oh, this. Okay, this is funny. It partially dropped the link. The link is down in deprecation. Was it there? No, it's not there. It was in a different deprecation link. Yay! Docker support. This is for Kubernetes 1.20. Docker support in the kubelet is now deprecated and will be removed in a future release. The kubelet uses a module called Docker Shim, which implements CRI support for Docker, and it has seen maintenance issues in the Kubernetes community. Ooh, abandonware. We encourage you to evaluate moving to a container runtime that is a full-fledged implementation of CRI, V1 Alpha 1, or V1 compliant as they become available. Holy cow. I don't know if Docker needs any more nails in its coffin, but it just got one. It got a big one. It got like a brick. So this is fair warning. There's a storm on the horizon. Swap out your container backends to containerd or something else, because the end is near. Sorry, Docker. It was fun. Next up from the maybe this is bad for security, Amazon Sidewalk. Okay, if you don't know what Amazon Sidewalk is, hold on. Let's actually start there. Where is it? Amazon Sidewalk. There, Sidewalk. Amazon Sidewalk by itself actually seems like a pretty cool thing. It's going to take, outside of all of the whether I like having listening devices inside my house and I don't, let's just talk about the technology as if privacy was not a concern. The technology is that Amazon devices they know about your Wi-Fi network, and they'll actually share that information between other devices and carve out a slice of your Wi-Fi network to enable them to broadcast to your neighbors, basically, to your neighbors' Amazon devices, building a mesh network that extends the reach of the devices outside of what you can get with just regular Bluetooth or your local Wi-Fi. The objective for this is, imagine that you have one of those little tile trackers on your dog or in your wallet, and you're out for a walk and you drop your wallet or you drop your dog, and then you come back home. Well, unless your dog is within 100 meters of your house, open air, then the technology is useless. This is going to enable your whole neighborhood to be reachable by your devices, and people are freaking the heck out, understandably, because privacy is a concern. This article, which you saw I clicked on from within the other article, explains the technology. And I think that Amazon is... Ooh, the new devices are equipped with 900 megahertz LoRaWAN. That's very cool. I think that Amazon's doing a really good job of trying to make sure that this is secure. It only uses a small bit of your Wi-Fi network. It's like triple encrypted. The devices can't see other things. Amazon can't see stuff, but It does require that you trust that they're not gonna, like, they have the encryption keys. They could probably flip a switch and then they can see those things. What are they seeing? They're seeing your devices and where they are and your tags and things like that. Does it matter? Well, maybe, because somebody could use that information to figure out when you're home, when you're not, what your routine is, where you've been, what you've done. So there's a surveillance and privacy concern. That's up to you to decide. The other article is that if you do own one of these devices and you're not already aware, Amazon Sidewalk is going to default to on in a few days. They did send out some emails about this. Most of them got spam canned, and so a lot of people didn't realize this. I still think that they're going to do a good job of this. When it goes on, you'll have a splash screen that says this was turned on and you can turn it off. But in the meantime, if you don't want to be a part of this for whatever reason, you can just go in and opt out. Next up, I teach a class on Intro to Kubernetes and Rancher every couple of weeks on Thursdays. Some of you have taken it. And this popped up yesterday that this individual, Max Brenner, very periodically shares overviews of how Kubernetes resources connect to one another. And some people asked him to make a web page for it, and so he did. So he has workload objects, networking objects, and storage objects. And these are just really cool, easy diagrams to visually understand how these things are connected. Like a cron job creates a job, or a horizontal pod autoscaler can create a deployment, a replication controller, a stateful set, or a replica set. Ultimately, these things come down and create a pod. A pod contains init containers and containers. So you see the relationship between them. Networking objects, also very interesting. And then storage objects. PVs and PVCs and storage classes frequently are confusing to people. And I feel like I'm not getting any sound. Well, I don't know. So they're frequently confusing to people, and a visual representation is helpful for understanding. So there you go. A gift from Max Brenner to help visually understand, oh, you all liked that, what's going on in your Kubernetes. Okay. This is the one. This came to me from Daniele Polanjic. Oh yeah, there is sound. Nice. No, I was concerned that there wasn't sound on my speakers, because if somebody needed to like shout me out, I need to pay attention to something. I didn't hear the beep. I heard the beep now, so we're good. Thank you, Ian, for that. Anyway, Daniele Polanjic from Learn Kates pinged me yesterday with this thing that I'm about to show you and said that they've been working on this for about 3 months. If you know Learn Kates, you know that their articles are huge, and they're like a 17-course turkey dinner. And there's just so much information in there. He said that he has read this article. I mean, they were working on it, but it wasn't entirely written by him, but he edits them, and he's read it a bunch of times. And every time he reads it, he said his mind was blown. So I didn't actually have it for today's show. It was going to be in tomorrow's show, but through some fluke, another piece of content I rejected this morning when I was doing the final screening, and this popped up in its place. I read it. Holy cow. Those of you who are in the chat are already reading it, because you're a bunch of cheaters. Okay. Authentication between microservices using Kubernetes identities. We've talked about this kind of thing before, and at the title you might be like, because that's how all of us are, right? I'm not going to tell you this whole thing, because literally, like, it would take me 2.5 shows to go through it all, but let's just go through the beginning of it. It explains that, how service communication would work with, passing identity tokens to every single call and where the problems might be with that. And then it talks about things like, you can use static tokens, you can use an OAuth server, you can roll your own AAA mechanism, such as mutual TLS, service mesh, Istio, cool. But, all they have to do is authenticate the caller, generate a token, and then validate a token. It talks about external SSO solutions like Keycloak or Dex. And it explains, like, with Keycloak, you log in with your email and password that verifies your identity. A valid session is created that might describe what groups you belong to. And then every request is validated and you'll be asked to log in again once that all expires. Well, this also applies with apps in your infrastructure. So you can have a backend component make a request to Keycloak with its API key to generate a session token, and then it makes a request to the second app with the session token. The second app retrieves the token and validates it with Keycloak, and if it's valid, it replies to it. But here's the logoness. You might not have noticed, but Kubernetes offers the same primitives for implementing authentication and authorization with service accounts, roles, and role bindings. The rest of this massive 17-course turkey dinner shows you, well, first of all, they do a little bit of magic first. So, create a Kubernetes cluster, and all of this hinges on a feature called service account volume projection. It says if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. They're going to drop that on you later on in the article. So just here, spin up a Minikube cluster, cool, enable some flags so that you get the functionality, clone this repository so you got some demo code to go along with the article, deploy the API component. This creates a data store, so you can get the URL, make a request, it failed. Then you go and deploy the data store. Great. Now you make a curl request to the API service again, and you're authenticated. So the data store service successfully verified the token and replied to the API, and the API forwarded the request to you. Well, what if you request directly from the data store? No. Well, what if you provide a dummy header? Go to hell. And so they've demonstrated that this functionality is present within Kubernetes. But it's straight up black magic voodoo. And if the article stopped here, you'd be like, okay, well, that's neat, and you'd move on with your day. But no, the remaining 85% of the article explains how this happens. And I'm going to stop there because I will do a terrible job of trying to explain this in the next 3 minutes that I have before I have to do tool of the day. If you do nothing else today, go read this. Grab a sandwich, bag of Doritos, I don't know, whatever, a soda. This is amazing. And if you don't know Learn Kate's, all of their content is like this. Amazing, 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 amazing. And it got straight 5 stars, 5 coffees from everybody, including myself, in the community. And what was Trufflebot's rating? Oh, Trufflebot didn't rate it because it was not found by the collector bots. Okay. Oh, what a perfect thing to end on before we have tool of the day. What's the theme of today? Sorry, what's the theme of this month? Policy. Policy. Chip Zoller works at Dell, I think? VxRail? Dell, VMware? I don't know how all that happens. Anyway, he's an active part of the Kyverno community. If you notice his website, he actually created the Hugo theme that I use on the cncn.io website, which I knew that this guy who did technology stuff had created it, but I didn't make a connection between him and what else he did until Jim from Nirmata told me that he had written this article. So it popped up with the collector bots last night. Super cool, well-timed. And this is an introduction into Kyverno. We've had Kyverno on the show, the arguments in favor of, but there's a couple of, first of all, this is the first of a series of articles. So check back and he's going to have more updates. I'll try and get him to do something actually in the community site. Chip, if you're watching, expect me to reach out and knock on your door. One thing that I thought was interesting that I didn't realize is Gatekeeper only operates as a validation webhook, does not have mutation ability. So that's another strike against it, in my opinion. So it's Rego, a new language you have to learn. Plus, you still have to, it'll just reject stuff and you have to fix it. Versus Kyverno can actually fix things or mutate them, not necessarily fix them. Give some examples and is a great way to get started. So for the challenge that you're going to see later, I'm going to encourage everybody to go and just fire up a Kubernetes cluster and deploy Kyverno. And this is the article that you can follow along with to just get up and running with some basic stuff. So Kyverno policy, for example, you need to label it. That's a great place to get started, and then we'll come back with more stuff as the month goes on. All right, we're going to jump over to tool of the day because that's also a little bit wowing. That's today's word of the day, wowing. It's like amazing and wow. Today's show had an average rating of 4 coffees. It's an excellent show. And now you don't have the ability to vote on tool of the day yet today. Yesterday that was an accident, but you know what? I should probably do this. Okay. I'm going to preface this by saying it doesn't exactly work. And that's what I would like your help with. This is Lico, I guess, and it looks amazing, and it partially works. I spent a couple of hours last night trying to deploy this in just my own Kubernetes clusters, and it didn't work, and it didn't give me any information why, and well, whatever, we'll talk about that in a second. The idea here is that it has a discovery mechanism for Kubernetes clusters either on the same LAN or across DNS using SRV records and DNS. And then those clusters can join one another. It sets up an automatic tunnel, and then workloads that you deploy, basically the worker nodes in another cluster become eligible for workloads deployed from the main cluster. But it's bidirectional. A great application of this is, you've probably heard me talk about Amazon availability zones being kind of a bit of a scam, in that if you deploy your Kubernetes cluster and they're like, best practice is to deploy control plane nodes across all 3 availability zones. And yeah, because then it's super, super chatty and you pay a crap load of money. Another option is to just deploy a Kubernetes cluster in each availability zone so that the control plane traffic and the etcd traffic is reduced between AZs, and then treat each cluster as an AZ and do a multi-cluster deployment of your app that goes across the AZs, and then do load balancing with your load balancers to route traffic accordingly. Something like this makes that possible. If you follow along with their quick start, which uses kind, first of all, it doesn't work on Mac. Throw that right out the window. Get yourself on a Linux machine, it works there. Just because their shell script makes some assumptions about how things work that don't work on Mac. 2, well, yeah, it works with kind. This actually worked, and I can show you. I just followed their whoops, it's not the right window. There. So I'm on one Kubernetes cluster right now, and you can see that this is a kind cluster. You can see that it's got a control plane and a worker, and then it's got this, which is actually the worker node from the other cluster. If I export, let's see, kubeconfig, if I go look at the other cluster, then you'll see the same thing. The worker node from the first cluster is a member of the other cluster. Beyond that, oh, I'm in the wrong cluster. So that's actually interesting. So I was on cluster B, and you saw that there was no Lico demo namespace and there were no workloads there. But if I jump back over to cluster A, am I in the wrong? Oh, demo Lico. Okay, so ignore everything I just said. Well, other than the one pod that's in a crash loop backoff, so you see these pods are all here, but if I say -o wide, then you'll see that some of them are on cluster 1 worker, and some of them are actually deployed on the other cluster. And this happened just automatically when I deployed it into here. There's all sorts of provisions around how scheduling happens and what workloads can go on the other one. You annotate a namespace to say that it's eligible for the cross-cluster functionality. The project itself is super duper 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 alpha, but super duper 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 cool. Let's jump back over really quick to their documentation, and lost my browser window. So first off, if you go to docs, their docs page has a problem in that their instructions for deploying this on your own Kubernetes cluster don't work. So I would very much like it if we staged a raid on them and helped get that fixed. But certainly go and deploy it in their quick start for kind, and you can see the potential that it has. If, however, you're trying to figure things out, what you can do is, well, you can just Google for Lico and then something, and you'll pull in the Google responses older documentation that's cached. and you can then go into the cached thing and you'll find out more information. I don't know why their docs are busted right now. That's the first thing that I'd like to see get fixed. Second, I spent all this time trying to figure out why it wasn't working. There's like zero information on troubleshooting, but it's a brand new project. It deploys a dashboard that I can't show you because we're out of time. It deploys a dashboard. It does auto discovery. Like, just go play with this, and you'll see that it's got a lot of potential. So that's today's tool of the day. Doesn't work that well, but definitely keep an eye on it, because when they get it to where it's a little bit more reliable, it's going to be amazing. And what does that mean? That means it's the end of the show. Sad. All right, that's it. That's all for today. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Links to everything that I talk about go up in the free community site at community.cncn.io after the show ends. Come join us. Community members get early access to the links, video replay, and other exclusive content. It's totally free, and the community is growing every single day. And make a bio for yourself, please. If you have something you'd like for me to consider for the show, post it in the community site, mention me in the post, or ping me on Discord or Twitter, and I will add it to the show. Have a great day, everyone. Keep learning, and I'll see you in the next show. Stay I don't know what that was. Stay caffeinative.